It was the first real summer of freedom after high school. I had just graduated and the future seemed like a far-off blur. My friends and I had talked about the summer for weeks, imagining what it would be like to finally be free of schoolwork, deadlines, and responsibilities. We made plans to drive out to the plateaus in Wyoming, to climb the rocks and soak in the views. It was our version of a rite of passage, something to mark the end of an era. We all piled into Alex's Jeep, and the excitement buzzed in the air. Alex, the only one with a reliable car, was our designated driver, and we all piled into the back, chatting and laughing as we drove. The scenery was breathtaking as we passed the winding roads, the wide open spaces of Wyoming stretching in every direction. We arrived at the lookout point, the Flaming Gorge Lookout, and it took my breath away. It was one of those views that made you remember why you loved living in this vast, untamed place. After taking countless photos and soaking in the view, we decided it was time to climb. We found a perfect spot with towering rock formations that looked challenging but not impossible. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land, and it felt like we had all the time in the world. Alex, being the most experienced climber, went first, followed by me, Nick, and Jack. The climb was nothing too crazy, just a steady scramble up the rock face, but with each step, I felt the weight of the wilderness around me, the sense that we were far away from the world we knew. When we reached the top, the view was worth the effort. The whole valley opened up beneath us, endless stretches of green and brown, and the fading sunlight painted the rocks in shades of gold and purple. We cracked open our beers, laughed about high school memories, and enjoyed the feeling of having made it. Everything felt perfect. That's when I saw it. A red pickup truck speeding down the highway faster than I thought was safe. It wasn't just passing by. After it zoomed past us, the truck suddenly screeched to a halt in the middle of the road. My stomach dropped. I turned to Alex, pointing at the truck. "What's that guy doing?" I asked, my voice low. The truck began reversing, slowly, and then it turned off the road and onto the gravel lot where we had parked. I felt my heart start to race. The figure in the truck was hard to make out, but the way the vehicle stopped, the way it reversed so deliberately, set my nerves on edge. We watched, our voices dying down as we all tried to make sense of what was happening. The figure got out of the truck. He was tall, but that was all we could tell from where we sat. At first, we assumed he was just another hiker, maybe someone else looking for a place to climb or rest. But then he started walking around Alex's Jeep. I could see him peering into the windows, trying the door handles, and generally inspecting the car as if he were planning to break into it. Nick, always the brave one, yelled from the top of the plateau to let the man know we were there. "Hey," he shouted. "The car's not unattended." At first, the guy seemed startled, jumping and looking around, unsure where the voice had come from. Then, to my surprise, he waved at us. He didn't get back into his truck. He didn't leave. Instead, he kept circling the Jeep, poking around the windows. My heart was pounding now. I didn't know what to do. We were too far away to make it down quickly, but there was no way I was going to let this stranger break into our car. Then Jack, in a panic, shouted that we were armed. I still don't know why he said that. We had no weapons with us, and it was a terrible idea to bluff like that. But it didn't matter. The man looked up at us, his face shifting into something far more sinister. He waved something in the air, presumably a gun, and shouted back, "Me too, kiddo." I froze. The sound of him ramming his shoulder into the Jeep's windows echoed up to us. The impact was so forceful that I could hear the glass shattering from where I stood. Panic surged through me, and I scrambled down the plateau faster than I thought possible, my friends close behind me. By the time we reached the parking lot, the man was standing next to the Jeep, still holding what was definitely a gun. He saw us coming, raised the gun, and yelled for us to stop. We had no choice but to obey, putting our hands up, terrified. He ordered us to throw our phones and wallets on the ground, and we complied without hesitation. The man collected everything, keeping his eyes on us the entire time, the gun never wavering from our direction. I was close enough to see his face now. He was older, maybe in his 50s, with a scraggly beard and a weathered look. Nothing about him stood out though, and that's what made it worse. He looked like every other man we'd ever seen. Identifying him was impossible. When he finished collecting our things, he pulled out a knife and punctured one of Alex's tires before walking back to his truck. I noticed it had no license plates. Without another word, he drove off, leaving us standing there, stunned and shaken. We didn't even try to follow him. What could we have done? We were completely unarmed and we were scared. We didn't feel safe anymore, not in the remote areas we'd once thought so beautiful. We called the police as soon as we got to Alex's house, but without any real identifying details. No license plates, no clear description. It was a dead end. We never heard from the police again, and as far as I know, the guy was never caught. That day ruined what should have been one of the best days of the summer. We stayed away from the plateaus for months, too shaken to go back. And even now, I can't forget that man's face. The darkness is always watching. If you want more stories that send chills down your spine, like, share, and subscribe to Dark Echoes. Stay safe or don't. We'll see you next time. It had been 5 years since that summer. 5 years since PS and I had taken that trip across Europe. We had just graduated from college, and the future was an uncertain blur. PS and I had always talked about taking a European trip together after graduation. She was the kind of person who, when she set her mind to something, wouldn't stop until it was done. And if there's one thing you should know about PS, it's that she had a kind of unshakable determination that I admired deeply. PS was a mix of Croatian and Brazilian heritage, and we had been planning this trip for a while. Even though we had very little money, we were still determined to make it happen. The cities of Zagreb and Dubrovnik were everything I had imagined, beautiful, vibrant, and full of tourists. We easily blended in with the crowds, finding cheap food and experiencing the sights without breaking the bank. But when we arrived in Rijeka, things started to feel different. Rijeka was a port city, a place far from the tourist hotspots. It had its charm, yes, but there was an undeniable sense of quiet emptiness. PS and I were clearly out of place, two foreigners standing in the middle of a city where tourists rarely visited. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but the local stares made me uncomfortable. They weren't the curious glances you'd expect when traveling abroad. They felt intense, almost predatory. We didn't let it stop us though. PS was fluent in Croatian and I was picking up words here and there, so we spent the day talking to locals and soaking up the authenticity of the town. Despite the discomfort I felt, PS seemed unaffected and I figured I was just being paranoid. The next day we decided to leave the city center and find a hidden gem for lunch. PS had heard about a small restaurant area from someone at our Airbnb. It wasn't far from the main city, just a 15-minute walk through quieter residential streets. The further we walked, the quieter the neighborhood became. The sounds of the city slowly faded, and all that was left were the occasional birds chirping and the wind rustling through the trees. My unease grew with each step. When we reached the restaurant, I immediately realized PS had made the right call. The smell of freshly grilled seafood hit me as soon as we walked in. It was a small, nondescript place with a few tables and a handwritten menu taped to the window. Despite the humble setting, the food was amazing, better than any of the tourist traps we'd visited. We ordered a large meal, including grilled fish, seafood pasta, and a bottle of local wine that cost only a few euros. I thought we had struck gold finding this place. As we ate, I noticed a group of 5 men had entered the restaurant. They didn't look like the usual tourists. They were rough, the kind of guys you'd normally cross the street to avoid. I tried to ignore them and focus on the food, but something about their presence made me uneasy. They were loud, their conversation almost too intense for a casual meal. PS was still chatting away, but she seemed distracted, occasionally glancing at the men. I didn't think much of it until I noticed PS's sudden shift in behavior. She went quiet, her eyes fixed on the men. I turned to follow her gaze and my stomach dropped. She leaned over and whispered, "We need to leave. Now." I was confused, asking her what was wrong, but she didn't answer. She simply reached for her purse and stood up. Her voice was urgent, and there was something in her eyes that told me not to question her. I followed her out without asking any more questions. The entire time, my heart was racing, unsure of what was happening. Once we were outside, PS finally spoke, her voice trembling slightly. I heard them talking. They said they were going to separate us, and some guy named Luca knew what to do with us. Her voice shook, sending a cold chill down my spine. The seriousness in her tone made me realize just how serious the situation was. I tried to calm her down, telling her maybe they were joking, but PS was adamant. They weren't joking. They were talking about what they were going to do. And it sounded like it wasn't the first time. I tried to dismiss it. After all, who would really go through with something like that? But as I glanced back at the restaurant, I saw the men standing outside watching us. Their eyes locked onto mine, and the chill that ran down my spine turned into a cold panic. They were definitely following us. Without a word, we both broke into a sprint. Our legs burned as we raced through the quiet streets, hoping to find our way back to the busier part of town. My heart hammered in my chest, and I could hear their footsteps behind us. When I glanced back, I saw them chasing us, getting closer with every step. I pushed myself harder, adrenaline coursing through my veins, but PS was faster, pulling me along by the arm. We ran for what felt like forever, the empty streets stretching out before us like an endless nightmare. My breath came in ragged gasps as we turned corner after corner, trying to lose them. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we reached a more populated area. People were walking along the sidewalks and cars were passing by. The men stopped chasing us, but they didn't go away. They just stood there watching, waiting. I turned to PS, both of us completely out of breath. Her face was pale and she was trembling, though she tried to hide it. I had never seen her like this, and it made everything feel far too real. We walked quickly to a nearby cafe where we finally caught our breath. An older man sitting nearby overheard us talking in English. He leaned over and asked if we were all right. After we explained what had happened, he shook his head in disbelief. "You're lucky," he said. "That area is full of criminals. Those men were part of a gang that controls these streets." I didn't fully understand it until he told us the worst part. "You were eating at a place known for being a hangout for those men," he explained, his face grave. "It's connected to a local criminal group. You don't want to mess with them." PS and I sat in stunned silence as the man paid for his coffee and left. We didn't linger much longer. We went back to our Airbnb, shaken, our sense of adventure completely gone. That night, we stayed in watching TV, too afraid to go outside. Our last day in Rijeka was a blur, spent inside, counting down the hours until our flight. Looking back, I'm grateful that PS had the presence of mind to get us out of there. If she hadn't understood what those men were planning, or if she had hesitated for even a moment, things could have turned out much differently. My name is Sophia. This happened 3 years ago when I was 19. I was driving cross-country with my older brother, Luke, who had just graduated from college in California. After 4 years of living there, he had accumulated an entire apartment's worth of things. Furniture, electronics, books, the works. Of course, he couldn't just fly back with all of it, so we decided to make a road trip out of it. But it wasn't just about the stuff, it was about the adventure. A cross-country road trip? Who wouldn't want that? We'd already planned to take the scenic route to see some of the places we'd both dreamed about visiting: Zion National Park, the Grand Canyon, and everything in between. The first part of the trip was incredible. Zion was breathtaking, and the Grand Canyon was everything I had imagined. Arizona was surprisingly beautiful, and we marveled at the wide open spaces. But somewhere along the stretch of New Mexico, things began to go wrong. The U-Haul, though it had a decent size, wasn't exactly built for fuel efficiency. The gas gauge dropped quickly and Luke started to worry. Our plan was simple: drive through New Mexico without stopping. We were warned by both our parents and travel forums about the risks of New Mexico: scams, small-town crime, and the more dangerous, remote desert areas. So, we agreed to just keep moving. But now we were in trouble. We weren't going to make it without stopping for gas. Luke pulled off to the side of the road, staring at the GPS. "There's a town ahead. About 10 miles away. We'll stop there," he said. He didn't look convinced, but what choice did we have? The town was small, no more than a few hundred people, maybe even less. There was an eerie stillness in the air, the kind that you get in desert towns where it feels like everyone's hiding inside, avoiding the heat. But it wasn't even hot that day. It was the kind of place where, if you squinted, you could almost imagine it in a horror movie, a small, desolate town with an unwelcoming air. There were a few run-down buildings, an empty main street, and no other travelers. The gas station was basic: just a few pumps and a convenience store attached. As Luke filled the tank, I noticed something unsettling. The few locals who were around gave us strange, lingering stares. It wasn't the typical curiosity you'd expect from a tourist spot. Felt wrong. There was one guy standing by the convenience store, smoking a cigarette, his eyes locked on me. Every time I glanced up, I caught him staring. It made me uncomfortable, but I brushed it off. We were obviously strangers in this small town after all. We tried to leave quickly, but something was off. No matter which turn we took, it led us further away from the highway. Every road was a dead end or just twisted in the wrong direction. The GPS was malfunctioning, routing us to roads that didn't even exist anymore. We were stuck. Luke was getting frustrated, and I was starting to feel a growing sense of dread. We could see the highway. It was right there, just a few blocks away. But every time we tried to get there, something pushed us further in the wrong direction. It was as though the whole town had been designed to trap us. After what felt like an eternity of driving in circles, Luke made a decision. I'm going back to the gas station. I'm asking for directions. He said it with an edge in his voice that made me anxious. I begged him not to, but he was too determined. He practically snapped at me, saying, "We're in the exact place we were warned to stay out of." At the gas station, Luke went inside. I sat in the U-Haul, my heart racing. I felt like something terrible was about to happen. When he came back, his face was pale. The guy inside gave me directions, he said, his voice shaking slightly. But they're strange. He wants us to go 17 miles in the wrong direction, through some back roads. I stared at him, confused. 17 miles? What? We can see the highway right there. Luke's expression was filled with doubt. He seemed confident, like he was trying to convince me. I didn't trust him. Before we could argue further, a dusty pickup truck pulled up beside us. My heart dropped into my stomach. The man in the truck asked if we were lost. Luke hesitated before answering, clearly on edge. The man's voice turned cold and serious when Luke mentioned the directions. "Are you crazy? You don't want to go down that way," he said. "That route leads straight into a drug-running hotspot. You'll get caught or worse." He gave us a different set of directions, then said something that chilled me to my bones. "It's a miracle you haven't been robbed already. You stick out like a sore thumb driving that U-Haul through here." We didn't even have time to thank him before he drove off. Luke, pale but determined, started driving again, following the man's new directions. Sure enough, about a mile outside of town, we found the gravel road the man had described. It was hidden from view, hard to notice. But after a long, convoluted path, we finally reconnected with the highway. And just like that, we were back on our way. But the feeling didn't leave. That sense of dread, the eerie silence, the feeling of being watched, it stayed with us long after we left that town behind. Looking back, I'll never forget that day. The strange looks, the dead-end roads, the man at the gas station, everything about that town felt off. At the time, I thought we were overreacting, but now, I can't shake the feeling that something much worse could have happened if we hadn't trusted our instincts. The town was more than just strange. It felt like a trap designed to lure in people like us. I can still remember the feeling of being watched, like we were never supposed to leave. Every now and then, I think about that day. I wonder about the people we met, the ones who seemed so calm, so eager to help, and I wonder if they were part of something bigger. But the thing that haunts me the most is knowing that there are places like that, places where danger hides beneath the surface, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The darkness is always watching. If you want more stories that send chills down your spine, like, share and subscribe to Dark Echoes. Stay safe or don't. We'll see you next time.